Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and move on to what we want to call our low ab press. Okay, now what we're doing here is we're going to utilize this instrument. And this instrument is our blood pressure cuff. Now, this blood pressure cuff is a standard kind of old school. We don't want a digital. We'd like to get an old school blood pressure cuff. And if you want to know a little more about this, then look at my video on utilizing the blood pressure cuff for exercise. This is a very important tool. It's one of, on the video also, the top 10 tools to have at home for exercise training program. And again, it doesn't just have to be at home, but this is a fantastic tool to train the brain or the conductor of the orchestra to get the orchestra or the players to be on the same sheet of music and everybody working together to make a beautiful piece of music that people actually want to hear. Again, if you've got the second violinist who's running off playing a completely different song than what the orchestra is playing, it's not going to work out well. We could also use the analogy of a sports team. If you have the head coach calling a play and the running back is off doing his own thing and running in circles while everyone else knows exactly what the play is supposed to be, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have to take that running back out, teach him what he's supposed to be doing, and put him back out on the field working with the other players, okay? So we're going to utilize this blood pressure cuff in order to get our abdomen to function now, not only with a cylinder charge, charging the cylinder with air, holding the air, but then pressing in and using those lower abs to create a little pressure, okay? And let's take a look at it here real quick, and we'll stop as we go, and we'll talk about it a little bit. So we got our blood pressure cuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pad of the blood pressure cuff, and I'm going to put it right where my lordosis would be. Okay, so, and let's say I've got a little bit of an arch to the back down here. Okay, I'm going to slide that cuff right in there. Okay, I want it to kind of fill that lordosis area or the curve area. We don't want a flat back. We want there to be a little bit of a curve in there. Again, you would imagine those knuckles kind of going through there, your finger sliding through up to the knuckle. So it's very important that we have a little bit of lordosis, and we're going to slide that cuff right into that lordosis. And we want the center of the cuff, the very center of it, we would want that belly button to penetrate down right into the center of the cuff. So not only are we going to arrange it in the lordosis, but we're going to center it in our torso to where you would feel the belly button would penetrate to the center of the cuff. Okay, so once we get that position in there, we slide it in there, we'll move on. So there's me adjusting it, getting it centered. Now I'm going to close off my valve, and I'm going to pump a little bit of air into that cuff so it'll fill up that space, and I'll feel, am I centered right to left? Am I centered up and down? And once I get centered and I feel I'm in the right spot, what I'm wanting is 40 degrees Mercury at rest. So while I'm resting, and we're going to show you a close-up of the cuff of the dial here in a video that's coming. There's me adjusting. I can feel there's a little bit of air in there now, and I'm wanting to get centered. Now what we're going to do here, once I'm centered, and I feel that my belly button would penetrate through to the center of the cuff, right and left, and then I'm also caught in that lordosis, just filling up that space beautifully. Okay, what I'm going to do is another thing to point out here, and I'll show this once I get going. We don't want the cuff to be right or left of our center line. We want really to take both, because if you do that, it's going to give you a faulty reading. Okay, you're going to be lopsided a little bit, and we want to take both hands and hold the cuff, and we want to kind of keep it centered to our torso as we look at it. All right, and once we get that, we're going to want to pump it up to 40 degrees Mercury, and we'll show that in our next video here. I think we have a close-up video of this, and then we'll show the cuff itself. We're going to pump it up to 40 while you're resting, okay, while you're just kind of just relaxed and you're breathing. 40 degrees Mercury is where we're going to have it. All right, let's see what we got. Okay. There's me pressing in. So the first thing that we're going to do, and I should be holding it with both hands, and I think I will either go to that or in the next video I will. Both hands centered. I probably have it trying to be centered here, but typically both hands is going to work best for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take in my air, okay? I'm going to fill my air. I'm going to fill the air. All right, then I'm going to hold that air, and I'm going to perform my lift and pull maneuver. Okay, so step 1, fill. Okay, step 2, hold the air, do not let it go. I'm going to hold that air, and then I'm going to pull up, or in I should say, and up and under, like we learned about in our last video. And again, when we're talking about program design, we will design a program that is going to enable you to do a number of repetitions. Again, posture's taken care of, right? So I'm not having to worry. I do need to be cognizant. Am I tucking my chin? Am I looking up? Are my shoulder blades rounding off the floor? Am I getting a kyphotic back? Am I flattening my back? And am I posteriorly tilting my hips whenever I try and make this maneuver? All those we will have ironed out in the last exercise, which just involved the lift and pull. But now what we're going to do is we're going to actually take our lower abdomen here and we're going to push down into the cuff while all this is in place. So here's step 1, or step 1 would be filled with the air. Step 2 would be draw in and lift and pull. And then step 3 is going to be press into the cuff until we can raise the dial on our blood pressure cuff dial to a 60. So we're just trying to raise it 10 degrees from a 40 at relaxed to a 60 when we press. Okay, so let's take a look at that one more time. I'm going to back up a little bit here. And getting situated again. I'm pumping up the air. I'm getting it centered. It's very important you get a good position. And again here, don't do what I do here, which is hold it with one hand onto the side. Big mistake there. That's what I'm doing right here for that brief moment. That's what you want to do. I felt like I needed to lower an arm so that you could see what was going on with my abdomen. I didn't want to cover that up. All right, so here we go. I'm going to breathe in. I'm going to pull up and in, and then I'm going to press into the cuff until that dial reads 60. Okay, and then relax. Breathe in. Pull up and in, and then press into the cuff until I get a 60 on my dial. Relax. Should be about 40 at relax on the dial. Breathe in, pull up and in, and then press into the cuff. And really what is happening is it's almost as if you have a tube of toothpaste down here. Okay? It's as if down here in that cuff, it's a tube of toothpaste. Our step 1 is fill up the air. Step 2, pull in with transverse abdominis. Step 2 also is lift and pull. Those happen simultaneously under the rib cage. You can see my rib cage expansion, which tells me that I'm supporting correctly. Step 3 is going to be press into the cuff. And in essence, what I'm trying to do is take this tube of toothpaste. Once I get to step 3, right here, okay, once I get to step 3, I'm pressing in and I'm trying to basically take this toothpaste and squish it out of the tube. Okay, that's what I'm doing. I breathe in, I pull in against the air, I don't let it go. I'm not letting it go. I'm pulling up and in, I'm pushing down into the cuff, flexing this lower abdominal region, and I'm trying to squish the toothpaste out of the tube. In doing that, it's going to cause the pressure as this lordosis moves away and we start to flatten into this. It's going to cause our dial here to go from 40 to 60. And I'm going to try and hold that for 10 seconds now. What we do want to get to, once we've got this flattening happen, this press happening for lower abs, is we want to be able to breathe. Okay, it's important that we're able to breathe. We don't want to hold that breath for 10 seconds every rep because we're talking about doing a 10-second hold for 10 repetitions. So, in that situation, once we get that needle to 60, we need to be able to breathe and maintain all of this. Okay, very, very important. So, let's look here one more time. Again, arm out of the way to show you. There was a breathe in, a lift and pull, and then a press in. 60 degrees Mercury on our cuff. Lower ab exercise number one. Very, very important exercise in being able to first take in your air, recruit your transverse abdominis, your lift and pull maneuver, which you'll hear me say so many times. Once we got that lift and pull and transverse, we're going to press into the cuff, flattening our lordosis a little bit and causing that tube of toothpaste to just, we took a cap off the end and now we're just pushing all that toothpaste out. It's causing our dial on our blood pressure cuff to rise from a 40 at rest to a 60. We're going to hold that 10 seconds. We're going to have to breathe at that point. Now, the real trick is keeping it at 60 while you're breathing. Initially, it's just a trick to get the press to happen. And again, to get the press to happen without any of the movement of the head, the shoulders, or the tailbone. And we do have a posterior tilt once we press in, and that is okay because we're actually creating a posterior tilt to squish that cuff, cause that dial to rise. But we need to be able to breathe at that point, okay, and keep that needle right at that 60. Once you can get that going through many repetitions, again, making sure these shoulders don't round. You don't do anything quirky with your head. Everything stays still. Once we can get that going and maintain that 10 repetitions while we're breathing, holding it at 60, and relaxing in between each one, start with your setup. 1, breathe in. 2, draw in and under the rib cage with that lift and pull. And then we press. All that working in concert, squishing the toothpaste out, needle rises to 60, holding all of that together while breathing. Okay, we got to master that. Let's get a close-up of it here for this next video. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to take just a close-up of the lower ab press. Our next video is going to be looking at the dial very closely to see how our numbers look on the dial. But right now, I just want to do a close-up of the abdomen, and I want you to see all of the movement of the abdomen that takes place. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so again, our steps 1, 2, 3. We're going to breathe in. There's the breathe in. We'll pull up and in, and then we'll press into the cuff. Now, what I want you to notice, there's me relaxing. Okay, what I want you to notice is that, in essence, you do all of this at the same time once you get good at it. And when you start, you may do step 1, breathe in. Step 2, hold the air and pull up and in. So up under the rib cage and in. We'll do one more description here of step 1 is fill the air. Okay. Step 2 is going to be hold the air, don't let it go. And then you're going to pull in with your transverse abdominis, with the belly button in and up and under the rib cage. Easy way to know if this is going right is you'll see this rib cage expansion. And again, when you're on the floor on your back, it's much easier to do this. It's much easier to feel this because posture isn't shutting it down, okay? And then step 3 is we're going to press with our lower abdomen into that cuff. It sits underneath here. You're going to flatten that out until your dial reads 60. And 60 is what we're going to start with. Eventually, we can move that up as you get stronger. We can move that up to a higher number. But all of this, when you get good at it, takes place all in one motion. Okay, so at first, let's separate the steps. And then once you get good at it, You can do it all in one motion. Let's see if we can get another one here. Fill up, pull up and under, and press. Getting my 60 degrees Mercury. There's relaxed. Fill up, pull up and under, and press. All at the same time. And I still have to be able to breathe. Now I'm going through these repetitions rather quickly. Again, initially, program design, we prescribe a 10 repetitions for a 10-second hold. So that is how much movement takes place in your abdomen. And remember, everything else is quiet and still. Our neck isn't seizing up. Everything's quiet and still, and we're just working that lower abdomen. Remember, we're creating a platform of which to work off of in the future. So let's move on and show you what the dial looks like and when we're pressing into it. Okay, welcome ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get a close-up now of our lower ab press, actually looking at the dial. And we're going to see what we're doing when we're pressing in. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that we are now at rest. So that cuff is under my back. And right now, while I'm resting and just breathing, the cuff hovers around 40 degrees Mercury. Okay, this is where we want it when we're at rest. We found our center position. We've got everything set up just the way we want in our positioning, and we're going to pump it up until at rest we're at 40 degrees, okay? And then once we go through our process, we're going to look at what that cuff does. There's me breathing. I'm going to go through steps 1, 2, and 3, and there we go. We bring it up to 60 degrees, and we're just going to hold that. And then when we relax, it comes back down to 40. All right, we rest. We set up 1, 2, and 3, and we raise that to 60 degrees. I'm doing it quickly here. Again, the goal initially for program design, more often than not, is going to be a 10-second hold for 10 repetitions. But that's what it looks like. That's what you're trying to see happen. Now, eventually what happens is we can feel what that 60 degrees pressure is. You get so good at it, you know, when you press in, you could close your eyes, press in, and you'll find that you can pull it right up to 60. Now, eventually the goal is going to be that we can raise that to 70 or 80 or even 100. And we can get better and better at recruiting the lower abdomen and pressing in and getting what we want without disturbing the rest of the body. Once you get control of that, and we have to make that autonomous, it has to become where we don't really have to think about it. We're just able to do it when we will without anything else disturbing us. Okay, so let's move on to our next exercise. That should wrap up lower ab press, and we'll move on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to the lower ab press number 2. And this becomes a little bit more advanced than the low ab press because we're going to start moving a lever arm or our legs down below us while maintaining our 60 degrees Mercury on our blood pressure cuff. So let's talk about this a little bit. Okay, we're going to get our position set up just like we did for lower ab press. And this time I'm going to go ahead and grab with the 2 hands and get it centered. And now while centered, what we're trying to do, we're going to compose our abdomen. We're going to get our press, squashing the tube of toothpaste down here in our lordosis. And now we're going to have to maintain that while breathing as we raise each leg and lower it, alternating. And a couple of things I want to point out about our legs, okay? Let's give it a little, play it on through a little more here. So the leg comes up, And then we're going to lower that leg down all the while. I've got my 60 degrees right here. Then we'll alternate. We'll go to the other side. Another thing I want to point out is that this angle from here to here, it's like we have a bracket here and a bracket here. And as we raise this leg, we want to keep that angle consistent, because what we're trying to avoid is using the anterior hip to do the work. That's going to be what your mind is going to go to initially. And when we're talking about people who sit a lot, people who in their jobs, they do a lot of sitting, we have tightness going on in this anterior hip and in our psoas. We're going to have some problems right here trying not to lift from this muscle. Okay, a lot of times what you'll see happen is as the knee goes back, you'll see this angle decrease and your leg will start to bend as you go up. And we're trying to avoid that at all costs. We want to keep the same angle as we come up. So one thing I like to use is you've got a little crane operator right here on that lower abdomen, okay? There's a guy right here who's got these little sticks, and each one of these sticks has a line to your knee. Okay. And what this guy here does, your crane operator, is he's going to raise this guide wire up from here. Okay. He's raising it from here. And he's going to raise and lower this point from your lower abdomen. We're trying to get to where we're recruiting this guy here and staying away from that anterior hip. That's going to be hard to do. That's why low ab press number 1 that we did is so important in getting this just so concrete in your mind that we can move on to a more advanced exercise like this. So let's go ahead and play again, see what we're doing. All right, so the whole time I've got this on 60. So freeze it there. Now what we'll notice is that our angle from here to here should be about the same, okay? I didn't bend this knee a bunch when I came up. You'll see this happen very often. My crane operator now has his guide wire right here, and he is raising that knee up, and then he's going to lower that knee back from here. From here, okay? So, and we would like to get the knee up to about 90 degrees. I'm going just shy of 90, which is fine, especially as we're learning and we're getting to know this. Let's talk about the cuff. Now, on the cuff, we want that 60 degrees. Now, you're going to find that the numbers are going to move a little bit, because as we raise this lever arm up, what happens is it naturally will push a little bit of that lordosis out, even more than what you're taking out pressing on that blood pressure cuff. It's going to posteriorly tilt your hips just a little bit more. So what you'll find is often as you're coming up, that will want to go above 60 on our dial. And as you're coming back down, it's going to want to drop below. So you're going to have to control that here. Okay? So as we come up, it wants to press into the cuff a little bit more. We have to figure out how to let go a teeny bit here and control that. And then as the leg is lowering back down, again with our angle controlled, and working from our lower abdomen here, we're going to have to push in with a little bit of this recruitment. And remember, we've got steps 1, 2, and 3 all going on here at the same time. We've pulled in our air, we've maintained that, we've drawn in and up and under, and we're pressing in all at the same time as we're alternating from side to side. Now, initially, you may find that you need to take a little break in between a right leg and a left leg, or maybe even a break after a right leg and reset, and then a left leg. But as you get better, you'll find you can maintain your composure here through the entire set, and that is the goal. And we're really getting this platform trained. Okay, so watch your dial. Now, I like to say, if you go above 10 degrees, above 60 to a 70, I really like to use 5 degrees. But initially, as you're moving those legs, and let me tell you, you got to move slow. to predict these movements. People move way too fast when they get going. They're yanking the leg up and down. That's why the blood pressure cuff is so effective. It shows you can't have that needle bouncing all over the place. We have to learn to control. Once you get good at it, you can move faster and faster. But initially, we want to make sure that the needle doesn't rise above 5 to 10 degrees in either direction as you're moving. Okay, I say, well, there's a little electric buzzer that's connected right here, and if it goes above that 5 or 10, you get a little jolt, a little shock in the fingers, and of course you don't. But I'm just trying to relay the importance of making sure we go slow enough to control the needle, because it's going to want to bounce on you if you move too quickly. Okay, so here we go. Let's take a look at it here. Okay, lowering that lever arm down, raising up the other side. I'm always composed right here. I haven't let go. I have not let go. Raising it up, keeping about that level. Little movement's okay, but you'll know if you start feeling pressure here, we know that we're not recruiting correctly. We shouldn't even get to this exercise until we know how to compose this and breathe. Okay, very slowly. And that needle is moving around, but I'm keeping it within 5 degrees of 60 degrees. The whole time, I'm trying to keep it right on 60 as much as possible. This is a fantastic trainer of this lower abdomen and keeping it composed as we breathe. Again, posture is great. We don't have anything coming into play. We're not contorting the neck. We're not rounding our shoulders. We're just keeping very still back here, and all of our work is happening right here with the crane operator. He's working everything for us. Our anterior hip is thinking, wow, it's been great to take a break, and letting that lower abdomen control these legs. Very important. Now, if you find that you are having a little trouble with this anterior hip coming into play, let's book a session. Let's talk about it. We can stretch that anterior hip out. So for people who have chronic anterior hip tightness, we will have already gone through a stretching routine for you. And what I would find that I would do before we even got to this exercise is I would stretch that anterior hip before we begin this movement, our lower ab number 2, and then I would stretch the hip in between each set that we do, depending on what the program design is for you at the time. So we really want to keep this anterior hip out of it. So we got our crane operator working. We're maintaining our angle on our knee as we come up, not bending more as we come up and then extending out as we come down. And we're using these big lever arms with our crane operator guide wires going to the knees, and he's hoisting those back and he's bringing them down, all from here. Okay, all of our steps are happening at one time. I never let go during the reps that you saw me do. It was engaged on that 60 the whole time. And then we want to make sure that we don't go in the beginning, maybe 10 degrees, all right, maybe 10 degrees above or below 60 as you're raising and lowering the leg. But we really want to minimize that and try and keep that needle to 60. And again, it's been effective when I talk to a client and mention they're going to get a little buzz on their fingers from this, kind of like one of those hand-shaking gag toys that they used to use that catch people by surprise. Now, it doesn't happen, but if we remind ourselves of that, it really causes us to move a bit slower. Another thing, when we're doing alternating march like this, you will find if this cuff is not centered well, you're going to have a problem one side compared to the other. Now, often we have imbalances in the body that cause it to be a little bit lopsided anyway. And those are things we need to work on. Another thing is if you do not hold this cuff center and you do it onto one side and lay the other arm down, you're definitely going to notice a problem on the cuff on one side compared to the other. So we got to keep the center line. We have to be breathing as we're doing this exercise. All of these steps are composed. We're keeping the angle. We're raising up to maybe a 90 degree, maybe a teeny bit shy. We don't need to go beyond 90 because that really activates that anterior hip. So we don't want to raise this knee beyond 90 degrees. We'll start even with less of an angle in the beginning just to get used to it. So if all of this is lined up, you should have yourself a very efficient and effective exercise here. Okay, so low ab number 2, let's move on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to lower ab number 3. Okay, so we're doing a series of progressions, and we have our trusty blood pressure cuff here as usual. And this one, we're going to be challenging ourselves just a little bit more and from a different angle. Okay, and lower ab press number 2, we started with feet on the floor, and we kept our angle as we came up. Um, we had our guide wires attached to our knees from our crane operator that was working from our abdomen. We maintained our 60 degrees on our blood pressure cuff and worked it up and down. Well, now on lower ab number 3, we're going to utilize the stability ball. Now, it's not that you have to use a stability ball, but it is effective in being able to get our leg down to the side and come back up. Now, there's quite a few things I want to point out with this, and if you want to watch my free video on utilizing the stability ball in the top 10 tools you can use in a home fitness gym, watch that, because the stability ball is a very important tool, and you'll see as we get into future videos how important that ball can be for us. Okay, so let's look at this now. What we're going to do is we're going to get an angle with our feet on top of the ball. Now, in essence, this ball is really sized too small for me, but I'm using this one as an example of how we can put our feet on here and how to utilize this for low abs. Now, in this situation, I'm going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to be working this angle here, and I'm going to be trying to put little brackets here and maintain this angle. And we're going to do the same thing going down and coming up. I'm going to shimmy my foot down the ball, touch my heel to the floor, and then head back up. Okay, and once we go to the side of the ball, you really don't want a lot of distance between your foot and the ball. Otherwise, the adductors inside the thigh here, they start to come into play, and we want to steer away from those if we can. So you shimmy that foot just to the side of the ball without touching it, touch the heel, and come back up. And guess what? Guess what number we're going to have here? It's going to be our 60 degrees that we're going to maintain. Now, here's the deal. Once we get our feet up on the ball, at that point, you'll want to find your resting 40 degrees Mercury. We want to find that when your feet are on top of the ball, because our lever arm is up here at a different angle than it would be on the floor. So therefore, our lordosis is going to be a little bit less. A little curve down there is going to be a little less because our lever arms are up higher. So we want to make sure we don't get our 40 degrees resting without engaging the abdomen. We don't want to get that until the feet are on the ball. So feet go on the ball, heels. We don't want the ball too far under our thigh or our calves. We want just the heels kind of resting on top of that ball. We want to go ahead, once we're there, breathe easy and relax. Now pump up and get your 40 degrees at rest. Now, once we've got that 40 degrees, the cuff centered, everything's looking good, then we can go ahead and do our steps. Breathe in, pull in and under, and press, and get our 60 degrees Mercury on our dial, at which point we'll pull both hands in and we'll start going after this alternating lowering of the leg while maintaining our 60 degrees on our dial. And again, I'll use that 5 degrees above or below. At this point, I really like to narrow it down to 5 degrees because this is a rather advanced exercise within the foundation series for lower abs. And at this point, it would really be good to stay within 5 degrees Mercury on our dial. If you go above or below 5 degrees, again, as you lower this lever arm, it's going to mess with the dial, and you're going to have to adjust here, okay, with everything going on at the same time. And again, here we go. We're really training our brain to recruit this lower abdomen, not the anterior hip, while we're in good posture, using the ground as our posture stick. All right, let's take a look at it. See what we got. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and grab with both hands because you know what we're doing in the abdomen now. So there we go. I just got my press, right? Pressed in. I'm going to lower down, bring it back up, letting my crane operator lower the guide wires, okay? I'm going to avoid that anterior hip. Lower down, bring it back up. I'm within my 5 degrees above and below 60 so that I don't get my little shock. Nice and slow. Controlling the movement. Again, trying to keep my angle consistent on the way down. I'm just shy of 90 degrees, but you can see I'm trying to maintain that angle on the way down and on the way up. Let me back up here. I want to look at this side one more time. So, once again, my angle is about consistent to what it was at the top. Okay. I've got my, I'm definitely engaged here. I've got my little crane operator who's got those guide wires, right? He's guiding up here, and he's now lowering this one down. And he's making sure to keep me pressed in. He's a stable platform, all right? He's locked in right here. So everything's taking place here, and we're trying to avoid this. That's going to be a very difficult thing. And now we're already past trying to strain in our neck. We're past rounding the shoulders. All this we've already progressed past. So now we've got a very high dollar operator here working this crane from our lower abdomen, creating a super stable platform of which to work. Okay, keeping our angle consistent so we don't bend it more as we come up or down, which definitely activates that anterior hip. We're keeping our cuff centered so that we don't get one side reading a little different than the other. And if you do, there's a teeny bit of variance there. Again, sometimes we're a little bit off in corrective exercise. Part of what we're doing is we're trying to figure out what areas, by evaluating you, what areas are a little too tight, what side is off. How do we loosen up and strengthen the right muscles in order to even you out as best as we possibly can so you can function with the utmost efficiency? Okay, so let's move on. I think lower ab number 3, with everything else we've explained, another great exercise to stabilize that brain to muscle connection in controlling the lower abdomen. And really, we're engaging transverse abdominis, lower abdomen, and really learning to use our core efficiently and really learning to protect our back. Okay, one of the great things we're doing. And to stay away from this anterior hip, which is so dominant in so many people. Okay, let's move on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now I want to, the blood pressure cuff itself is a fantastic tool to learn with. You start that learning process with that blood pressure cuff, and it's so effective in controlling your time and your tempo so that you don't move too quickly. You get an accurate feeling of what we're trying to do. So that's why on my free video on YouTube of the top 10 tools to have in a home gym, that is one of the big ones, okay? But I want to show you what we want to gravitate to eventually. Eventually, we can move beyond the cuff, and I want to show you how we're going to do it without a blood pressure cuff, okay? And this would apply to lower ab number 1, lower ab number 2, and lower ab number 3 press. So let's take a look at this here, and let me show you what we're doing. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use our fingers, okay? We're going to take the cuff out, and I'm going to show you how to use your fingers as the blood pressure cuff. And now you're going to be using those fingers, and they're going to give you the sensitivity and the feeling of the press. Now, I'm putting the fingers in the exact same place, okay? They're going right in that curve of the lordosis. They're going right in that curve, okay? Right where I've got that little curve in there where the cuff went. And they're going to meet up under there. and they're going to overlap just a teeny bit. I'll show you how that's going to happen. But in essence, now they're acting as the cuff. So when we press in, at this point, you're going to know what 60 degrees Mercury feels like. Your abdomen is going to remember it. So at this point, it is effective to use the fingers as long as we don't have any impingement in the shoulder here. If you feel any of that, we need to go back to the cuff. We don't want any shoulder problems from this position right here. So watch out for that. Okay, but we want to use those fingers as our cuff now. Now let's take a look and give a bit more description here. So I'm centering it just the same way I would the cuff. There's my leg up and my leg down. I've got my press happening here, and I know in my mind what 60 degrees feels like because I've done it so many times that I recognize the feeling of 60 degrees or more, depending on how far you've gotten. So again, I'm demonstrating a lower ab number 2 press, where I'm keeping the angle as consistent as I can, staying away from my anterior hip. And I'm using my crane operator to bring that guide wire up and down. Now that is how we want to have those fingers. They're overlapping just a little bit, okay? So my ring finger is actually touching my middle finger, and here my index finger is touching my middle finger. So this is how we want to have it. We don't want it on top of each other, but we want them connected. And that is going to be your cuff. That is what's happening underneath your back right there. Okay, so once we put that in, we're going to connect it just like that in the same spot that the cuff would have been. Very important we get that position correct. And then I go through my 1, 2, 3. I've got my 60 degrees that I'm maintaining. Now I can use my fingers and I don't have to have the cuff. And you can use this finger approach for exercise low ab number 1. You can use it for low ab number 2, and you can use it for low ab number 3, where the feet were elevated on top of the ball. All of those can be utilized with the fingers as well. So now you know how to, once you don't need the cuff because your brain and your muscles are so used to feeling what you need to feel, you can make this happen just with your hands. Very important step to be able to take. And let's move on.